Welcome back to Hot Water Wrestling for part 2 of my video that got cut off, my shoot on PG, WWE, WWF Now and Then. Anyways, I put a link down in the description bar to part 1 for your convenience. Anyways, to pick up where I left off, I'm sure people were pissed off in 1985 and in the 80s, people who have been watching the wrestling of the 70s, just like we're pissed off now, and I mean, as a fan from that era, I wasn't too thrilled with all the backstage segments of the Attitude Era. The Attitude Era was not perfect. There was a lot of really silly, cheesy storylines and a lot of really just over-the-top stuff that, I don't know, it kind of got old after a while, and I guess, it left a mark on wrestling, or at least in WWE wrestling, and what we also see in TNA, although we have less of it in TNA, but WWE has always felt the need to have these backstage segments ever since the Attitude Era. Hold on a moment. The backstage segments were never, I had an itch in my eye, sorry. The backstage segments were never that elaborate back in the day until the Attitude Era. You didn't have things like driving Zambonis and driving cars through the studio and running over wrestlers and squirting people with beer hoses, and some of those were some of the better ones. Obviously the beer hose was a great moment, and a lot of the antics DX pulled. I mean, you didn't have a lot of that stuff back in the day, and so that was a little outlandish and shocking to me. As I've said, I stopped watching wrestling in the early 90s, after like 92, because I just didn't really like it that much. And yes, I did buy the new set, the first 2 seasons of Raw, and I put it on, and no, I don't I don't really love it. As I'm a completist, and so it's good to have it. And there are some gems on there, but I mean, for one, Jeff Jarrett, look at his outfit on there. Look at the way he was. that was just stupid. Just absolutely ridiculous. But not to get too off track here, but what I'm saying is that we're always going to look at the past, because wrestling has always changed, and this is just another change, and I'm sure it'll change again. One of the things that upsets me about Raw is that the show by nature has always been raw. That's what it's supposed to be. It's not supposed to be this toned down, tame thing. It's supposed to be in your face, intense, exciting action. That's a little racy and a little over the top, and the envelope's pushed a little more. Not this kind of watered down show that we're seeing now. That seems to be a little more for kids. If they were to do away with Raw and maybe change the name of it, that might do some justice, but we would probably all complain about that. So no era in wrestling is actually perfect, but what does seem to be a constant is that it's always changing and evolving. So eventually we'll look back on these days when it's different, and we'll know what was good about these days and what wasn't, and what's good or bad about the new direction. So that's basically, all I wanted to say. And one thing about Sergeant Slaughter, the reason I brought him up was that he was being groomed to actually take the title away from the Iron Sheik. Sergeant Slaughter was supposed to be the real American, the guy that Hulk Hogan actually became. I'm not sure if Vince McMahon Sr. was alive or if he had just resigned, but basically what had happened is Hulk Hogan had got the offer to do the Rocky III movie, and Vince Sr. told him, if you do that, you're out, you can't come back. And Hulk Hogan took a risk, and he went and did the film anyways, and didn't think he would ever get invited back. And Vince McMahon, took over the company and actually welcomed Hulk Hogan back, and that actually screwed Sergeant Slaughter out of his title reign. And that's why Sergeant Slaughter, you kind of see him he disappeared from WWF after Hogan came and beat the Iron Sheik. A little feud between Sheik and Slaughter still happened, actually, but it was really, Iron Sheik winning the title was geared toward this build-up that Sergeant Slaughter was actually going to come be the big American hero, that Hulk Hogan came, and of course Hogan became larger than life, and we all know what happened then. So anyways, I just wanted to, get that off my chest. As far as, if you were a fan of the 70s, you probably would have been appalled by the 80s, which was declared the greatest wrestling era of all time. And me being a fan of the 80s, I was appalled by a lot of what happened in the 90s, even though there were some great things in the Attitude Era. So, nothing's for everybody. I'll see you guys next time on Hot Water Wrestling.